Another killer collapse by the Falcons, losing 27-26 in week 1 to the New Orleans Saints. We'll be breaking down what went wrong, what went right for the Falcons in their week 1 opener.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So you guys know me, your very humble podcast host, Aaron Freeman, here of Locked On Falcons, aka Sirius Black, aka Mr. Drew. And Locked On Falcons is, of course, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family. We thank everyone that makes Locked On Falcons their first listen, especially this Monday morning after week 1, where we can give all the overreactions. Locked On Falcons is free and available on a variety of podcast platforms Monday through Friday, including Apple, Odyssey, Google, Spotify, and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Falcons YouTube channel, and you will get the video version of the podcast the night before the audio drops. So today we're giving the rapid reaction Sunday evening on YouTube. Also, you can probably catch it on the Locked On Falcons audio platform feed as well Monday morning, for I know a lot of you guys out here will be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly from this Falcons week 1 collapse. The great falconing as usual with the Falcons collapsing late in the game. We'll start things off talking about the ugly side of this game, which is that collapse. You know, the Falcons had pretty much controlled this game for the first 47-ish minutes going into the fourth quarter, and then they blew a 16-point lead. They were up 26-10 at that point in time. There were 12 minutes and 41 seconds left in the game. The Falcons decided at that point they wanted to give their best pass rushers a breather. You know, they had gotten 4 sacks earlier in the game, 3 of them coming from Grady Jarrett, Arnold Ebiketie, and Lorenzo Carter. And none of those guys were on the field for this series that the Saints had, this possession that the Saints had with 12 minutes and 41 seconds left in the game. And instead it was Quentin Bell, it was Ade Ogundeji, it was Matt Dickerson. They finally got their opportunity to play, and it did not go well for the Falcons, who had basically not given up really any explosive plays outside of a big run by Taysom Hill that set up the Saints' first touchdown earlier in that game. And then they gave up a number of those 20-plus yard plays on this fourth quarter drive, and the Saints were able to go 75 yards in 4 plays thanks to 2 explosive plays. The Falcons got no pass rush thanks to not having their main pass rushers in the game, and they played a lot of zone coverage, playing that soft zone, and it was capped off with a 3-yard touchdown to Michael Thomas on a fade ball where he was working against AJ Terrell. The Saints then went for 2. Chris Olave was easily able to beat Jalen Hawkins on the sprint out, and that cut the Falcons lead to 26-18 with about 11 minutes left. And then, you know, on the ensuing drive where the Falcons had a chance to sort of move the ball, things started out well. They got a big 3rd down conversion from Drake London. Then they had another 3rd down a couple of plays later, a 3rd and 3, and the Falcons went with a play call, questionable play call. And at the time, you're sort of sitting there, they went with the play call that they had earlier in the game at the end, I think, of the first quarter or the beginning of the second quarter. They had went with this unbalanced formation where they moved Caleb McGarry to the left side of the line. They put Parker Hesse in motion to sort of overload the left side of the Saints defensive line with the Falcons offensive line, and ran behind that. And on a 3rd and 1 at the earlier in the game, they were able to convert to Patterson on a 2-yard gain. And so when I see the Falcons going into that same formation, I'm like, okay, well, they're making the Saints think that they're about to run the same exact play that they did earlier in the game and convert, but they're actually going to do play action. No, the Falcons ran the same exact play, and again, they only got 2 yards on that previous time it worked. This was a 3rd and 3. So like the reason why Arthur Smith went for that play call is beyond me, but I guess he wanted to be hashtag physical there. The Falcons failed to do that, so they got stuffed. They punt the ball back to the Saints with 7 minutes to go in the game. And now the Falcons aren't as conservative on defense on the ensuing drive. They learned their lesson. They're playing more man coverage. They're bringing pressure. They brought a blitz on a 2nd down, forces a 3rd and 3 from the Saints. They go with man coverage, but then, the one flaw of man coverage is really susceptible to rub routes, so that's that's what the Saints did. They ran a rub route. Michael Thomas beats AJ Terrell for a 21-yard gain on like basically a wheel route, a fade, if you want to call it that. And then the Falcons get a stop on the next play with a 10-yard, maybe 2 plays later, when the Saints run a screen play. Michael Walker blows up Alvin Kamara for a 10-yard loss, pushes the Saints back to 2nd and 20. Guess what the Falcons do? They get conservative again. Terrell gives up too much cushion, playing that deep third, and the Falcons cover 3 to Michael Thomas, converts on a dig route, which is, the most susceptible. Those in-breaking routes are what the cover 3 is vulnerable to. He converts on a 20-yard gain. That was, by the way, their third 20-plus yard play of that specific drive. Then in more zone, Landry gets 14 yards, gets the ball inside the 10. Then Thomas beats Terrell on a back shoulder fade for a 9-yard score. It was good coverage by AJ Terrell on that particular play, but of course those back shoulder fades are virtually impossible to stop if the quarterback and the receiver are on the same page, and Jameis Winston and Michael Thomas were. And then that puts the Falcons up 26-24. Thankfully, they stuff Mark Ingram on a 2-point conversion. So the Falcons have a 2-point lead, 3 minutes, 38 seconds left to go in the game. They get it down to the 2-minute warning, running the football and making a couple of throws. It's 3rd and 6 now, right after the 2-minute warning. And this is kind of the game right here. Marcus Mariota just heaves up a deep ball to Olamide Zaccheaus. It's well overthrown. And you're sitting here going like, what? Like, really? That's it? But guess what? There's a late flag. Marshawn Lattimore is flagged for defensive holding. And it's funny because like everybody knows that Marshawn Lattimore is the grabbiest corner in the history of the world. And he's gotten away with so much interference, so much defensive holding, illegal contact, all these various things. And then on this play, he just kind of grabs, I can't remember if it was London or Pitts, just slightly, just a little yank, and they throw the flag on him. It's like, okay, like this is karma. The football gods might be finally on the Falcons side for once. They get the call, they get the flag that bails them out. It's the football gods going against Marshawn Lattimore. Finally, you get a 1-yard run from Patterson on the next play, an 8-yard scramble on Mariota. That sets up a 3rd and 1. It's a minute 40 left in the game, thanks to the Saints calling both of their final 2 timeouts. So it's 3rd and 1. This is kind of the game. If the Falcons convert here, they can run out the clock, and the game's over. They win. And then, of course, Mariota mishandles the snap. He stops shy of the sticks, and it's 4th and 1. And so the Falcons are going to punt the ball back. And you're sitting here going, it's at the Saints 42-yard line, or at least I'm sitting here going, it's at the Saints 42-yard line. They could still go for it on 4th down and in the game. And kill it right there, right? But instead, they let the clock tick down to 54 seconds. They take the delay of game penalty, pushing them back 5 yards. So now the 4th down conversion to end the game is over. And I get it, like you're at the 42-yard line. If you don't convert on that 4th and 1, the Saints basically have to go like 25 yards in in 2 plays. They can do that in 2 plays and get in field goal range and win the game. But I'm just sitting here in my head thinking, again, hindsight, whatever. But like why not, call your timeout? You got 3 timeouts left. Let the clock tick down instead of taking the delay a game. Let the play clock click down in the last second. Call the timeout so there's like 55 seconds left. Line up on 4th and 1. Try to draw the Saints. If the plan is to punt it, try to draw them off sides. At least try it, right? And if they don't jump, then you take the delay of game penalty and you punt. It's the same result. But to just basically concede it automatically just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. So the Falcons punt the ball back to the Saints. Basically, it's like 48 seconds left in the game. The Saints basically have to go 60 yards to get into field goal range. Oh, no, it's actually 50 yards because Liam McCullough, the Falcons long snapper, gets flagged for holding on the punt. So you basically know how it goes from this point on if you're a Falcon fan. 40 yards comes on the first play. They got to go 50 yards, and they go 40 on the first play. Thanks to Casey Hayward doing God knows what on that play covering Jarvis Landry. And, Winston just heaves up a bomb to Jarvis Landry. I think Hayward thought like he was going to have deep help and was going to try to play trail technique against the deep ball, but the safety doesn't get there. But like, why Casey Hayward? Like, why are you just giving Landry a go route with nothing? I don't get that. So Landry makes this incredible catch. He's pushed out of bounds 40 yards. That stops the clock. Jameis Winston, pulls what could have been one of the all-time brain farts, and spikes it, thinking that the clock was still running. They call him for intentional grounding. That costs the Saints a down. They lose 10 yards. So you're okay. The football gods are back on the Falcons side. The Saints screwed up for once. And then it's like, oh my God, maybe something will actually go the Falcons' way. And of course, no, very next play, Juwan Johnson beats Jalen Hawkins for a 17-yard gain. Jameis correctly spikes the ball after that, stops the clock. It's 4th down. Will Lutz trots on the field for a 51-yard field goal, 19 seconds left. He hits it. So it's basically, you're hoping for a miracle at this point in time. You're a Falcon fan, you're not expecting it. But they have to kind of go like, I don't know, like 50 yards and like with 19 seconds, like maybe you definitely got 3 plays, maybe 4 plays to go 50 yards. You got all 3 timeouts because you didn't use one on the previous drive. So it's like, it's possible, right? It's slim, but it's possible. You throw a deep pass to Kyle Pitts, it's well overthrown, almost picked off. Then you throw another crosser to Pitts, doesn't connect. You got 10 seconds left. And then you got to kind of go, you still got to go like 50 yards. And the Falcons decide they want to throw like these quick slants to Cordarrelle Patterson. Like, you get like a 10-yard gain, you get a 5-yard gain. Like, you move the ball somewhat, but like you're not really doing anything to really move the needle. Then you kind of get a gift of a personal foul against Lattimore. You get another 15 yards, but that sets up Koo on a 63-yard field goal. It's blocked and the game is over. So really good first 3 quarters of the game. We'll get into some of the good of those first 3 quarters, some of the positives from those first 3 quarters, but an awful fourth quarter. Basically the same old Falcons. Certainly Arthur Smith and Dean Pease, the defensive coordinator, have some splaining to do with some of the choices and decisions they made late in this game. It's not all on them. There was a lack of execution on the Falcons as well, but certainly you can, given hindsight being 2020, you can certainly question these things, and I don't think it's purely hindsight that causes some of us to question some of these things. So we'll see what their response is throughout the week. We'll continue today's Locked On Falcons, talking about the things that went right for the team as we continue today's episode, guys. But the Falcons, Mercedes-Benz Stadium is the place for epic fails, just like the internet is the place for epic fails. And you don't want to be that guy that has that public proposal that goes wrong in front of 20,000 people, where your special someone says no, or you're out there on a boat trying to be romantic, and rather than that ring winding up on that person's finger, it winds up in the water. Don't be that guy. You don't want to see your epic fails, like the Falcons' epic fails, splattered all over the internet and going viral for all the wrong reasons. And while there's no insurance for that special someone to say yes to your question, there is protection just in case your ring winds up in the wrong place, because the folks at Bright Cold Jewelry Insurance will make sure you get a replacement for the value of your ring, whether you're looking for insurance for your ring or some other piece of jewelry, whether it's lost, it's stolen, or you just basically can't figure out what happened to it. Just go to bright.co/locked on. It's the fastest, easiest, and cheapest way to cover your butt with the best jewelry insurance in the biz. So let's talk a little bit more about the good that stemmed from today's game. Now that we've sort of talked about the ugly, the good was the Falcons won in the trenches. That was a thing that we talked about earlier this week. That's a thing we've been talking about for months now, that the Falcons have to win the battle in the trenches, and they answered that question. They gave up 0 sacks in this game. I'm sure there was some pressure allowed, but for the most part, it seemed like Mariota was able to use his legs to avoid that sort of pressure. He finished the game with 72 yards rushing on 12 carries. Patterson had 120 yards rushing on 22 carries, a career high. Falcons had over 200 yards rushing. I probably should have looked it up before jumping on to record this, but I can't think of the last time the Falcons had 200 yards rushing. I'm sure they probably had one of those games in like 2016 or something like that, but it feels like you had to go all the way back to like 2008 with Michael Turner, the last time the Falcons had a 200-yard rushing game. And it was notable that Patterson stepped up. It's a weird thing to say because Damian Williams exited this game early with a rib injury. He did come late in the game because I think he was actually on the field on that 3rd and 1 where Mariota botched the snap, which again, certainly questionable. Why would you put Williams out there on the field and not Patterson? But it left the Falcons very thin at the running back position because Tyler Algier was a surprise inactive today. And, Avery Williams did get 2 carries late in the game, I think in the third quarter, to give Patterson a little bit of a breather. But the fact that it was all on Cordarrelle Patterson as well as Mariota to provide the Falcons running game, and Patterson certainly stepped up. He ran with power. He was making guys miss. There were big lanes opening up for him. So the offensive line certainly was doing their job. There was a 9-play scoring drive at the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter, that gave the Falcons a 10-7 lead in this game. And 8 of those 9 plays were carries by Cordarrelle Patterson for a combined 53 yards rushing. He had a 100% success rate on those 8 runs on that specific drive. In fact, his success rate throughout the entire first half on 12 carries for 83 yards was 100%. And for those of you that don't understand success rate, that's new to you. It's something that we use constantly on this podcast to measure rushing efficiency, because it's better than yards per carry, because success rate is based off of down and distance, and is basically like a pass fail sort of basis, while yards per carry is too easily skewed by like negative runs or really long runs in that regard. So success rate does a better job of measuring down to down consistency as a runner, rather than basically giving you too much credit for one big long run or too much blame for one negative run. But then Patterson's success rate in the second half of the game was only about 40% on about 10 carries. That's still a decent number. 40% is about average success rate you want in this league. 45% is good. 50% is great. Anything higher than 50% is amazing, really. And so 100% is like basically like being the perfect passer rating or something like that. Like basically think of the percentages for success rate, double them, and whatever that number is. So 45% would be like a 90 passer rating, and 90 passer rating is good. So that's how you kind of think about success rate. Just look at it from that standpoint. And the Falcons were successful running the ball in short yardage. That was the thing that they were terrible at last year. They were the worst offense in the league in short yardage situations up until the fourth quarter, up until those last couple of plays that we already described. They were 4 for 4 in short yardage situations and converting in this game. You saw the defensive side of the line of scrimmage win as well. 4 sacks, a number of pressures on Winston. Winston played very poor in this game up until the fourth quarter, but then sort of the typical Jameis Winston that we have, much to our chagrin, known to come alive against the Falcons throughout the years, whether it was in Tampa Bay, showed up in that fourth quarter. He made some big time throws, but up to that point, he was under duress. He was missing throws. He just looked off his mark. And then, they were able to keep Michael Thomas in check. I don't know how many catches he had in the first 3 quarters, but it seemed like he maybe had like 1 or 2 in those first couple of quarters. And then he came alive in the fourth quarter and showed up big for them as their go-to wide receiver. The Falcons' go-to wide receiver in Kyle Pitts had a pretty quiet day, but Drake London definitely sort of stood out as their go-to guy, finished the day with the team lead, 5 catches for 74 yards. Again, Mariota did good work running on the ground. He was decent passing. Again, I wouldn't say he was bad or anything like that. He was kind of up and down, a little hot and cold. He had a bad fumble midway through the third quarter where he should have slid, but he was kind of fighting for extra yards. And this is kind of a tendency of Mariota to, like, he plays that style of football. Like, he's not going to slide and do those things pretty consistently. And that was known in Tennessee to kind of bite him in the butt. And sometimes it led to these really crazy plays, for him. And so that's just kind of how he plays. As a passing standpoint, there were a couple of throws where he was a little late on. There was a notable third down late in the first half where he was late on a throw to Kyle Pitts, and that sort of prevented Pitts from securing the ball before the defender hit him and jarred the ball loose, leading to an incomplete pass, and the Falcons had to settle for a field goal instead of getting that conversion and possibly going down the field and scoring a touchdown, which would have given them a 17-7 lead at that point, rather than the 13-7 lead. They ultimately got a 16-7 lead going into the half as well. So I know people are going to sit here and say, "Oh, you're just hating on Mariota." Like, no, it's this is the scrutiny that a starting quarterback is going to get on this podcast, whether it's Desmond Ridder, whether it's Marcus Mariota, much to the chagrin of the quote unquote Matt Ryan fans. A year ago, we gave Matt Ryan the business on this podcast constantly. People called it nitpicking or whatever the case, may be. But the difference is, with Ridder, he's a rookie, so I do not expect him to be perfect. He will get criticism when he's not perfect. But again, Mariota is a veteran. Matt Ryan is a longtime veteran, so they're going to be held to a much higher standard. When they mess up, they'll get called out a lot more frequently on that. But I think when the offense looked good, it was mostly when Mariota was on the move, the bootlegs, the rollouts. You saw a lot of that today, a lot of play action stuff, and that worked with some of these crossing routes and these digs and whatnot. But when it came to kind of the straight drop back passing stuff, where Mariota needed to throw with rhythm and timing, he was a little off. There were some throws left on the field. Again, not a huge number of throws. I can think of like 2 plays where it felt like, that Pitts play, and then there was another play on a conversion to Drake London where he was late on the throw that Drake London could have gotten more yards after the catch had he thrown with more timing and whatnot. And we'll see what the film says. Maybe it was just those 2 plays that stood out to me, and the rest of them were fine. So we'll talk about that more on Wednesday's episode when we get to the all 22 review. And if you guys have any questions that you want me to investigate when I do watch the film, which usually drops on Tuesday, but the NFL is kind of infamous over the years that the first week of the season, it usually comes like a day or 2 late. So we'll see if that, knowing how NFL Plus turned out, I'm not going to hold my breath that it will be on time this year. So, what things that you want me to check out when the film does eventually drop and we do get a chance to watch that all 22, of course, you can provide those questions via email to lockedonfalcons@mail.com. You can leave a comment here on the Locked On Falcons YouTube channel, or of course, you can hit me up on social media at Locked On Falcons on Facebook or Twitter. So we'll get into that on Wednesday's Q&A. That's at least the plan. And we'll wrap up today by, I guess, talking about the bad, but we'll talk still about some of the good and bad and sort of the final conclusion, at least my final conclusion, based off of today's disappointing loss in week 1. But before we get there, guys, I do want to plug the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family, where you can find 3 shows, 4 hosts breaking down not only local Atlanta and Georgia sports, but also national sports headlines. Mark Zeno with the A to Z podcast is going to be talking about this game. John Chucker is hitting hard, and Jarvis Davis and Tanisha Batista on ATL Day Ones are breaking all those things down. Falcons, Braves, Bulldogs, etc. The Hawks, maybe, I guess, if anything's going on with the Hawks. You can find them all on the same podcast feed, including on YouTube. Just subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta wherever you get your podcast. And guys, I also want to tell you about Prize Picks, a new fun way to play daily fantasy. All you got to do is pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, then you can, hit it big with a multiplier on your entry. I had 3 projections this year. I needed Mariota to go over or get more than 210 yards passing. He did. I needed Josh Allen to get more than 275 yards passing. He did. I needed Kyle Pitts to get more than 56 yards passing. He did not. So I did not quite hit on this, but whether it's NFL projections, it's NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, more. And it's the great thing about Prize Picks is it's not just me against other people. It's just me versus those projections. And so Prize Picks is a safe, fast, and easy way to play daily fantasy, and it's currently in operation in over 30 states in the US and Canada. All you got to do is download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com, sign up to play today, and first-time users can receive a 100% deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That means if you deposit 100, Prize Picks will give you another 100. All you got to do is use that promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. So again, we'll wrap up today's episode with the quote unquote bad, although it's not all bad. Again, I guess the bad is you wanted to see your best player step up late in the game to help you win the game. Again, quiet day for Kyle Pitts. AJ Terrell, got beat by Michael Thomas a number of times. This is a receiver that has given him a number of problems over the years. Again, Grady Jarrett, your other key player on defense, dominated early in this game, but then kind of got quiet as the game progressed. Again, we'll watch the film in the all 22 to see maybe if it tells a different story, and those guys deserve more credit than I'm willing to give them. But it was nice to see some of the young guys, some of the unproven guys step up. Michael Walker had a good day. Drake London, of course, had a good day. The offensive line, the much maligned offensive line, had a good day. Caleb McGarry-Island was solid. Again, no Hurricane Jordan hitting Caleb McGarry-Island. I liked seeing Parker Hesse. The Falcons were operating a ton of their offense out of those 2 tight end personnels. Parker Hesse was lining up at end, H-back, in the backfield at fullback. A lot of 12 personnel with the Falcons offense operating. Very little action from Keith Smith, the Falcons fullback. He was out there, but to me, I don't recall him really making any impact blocks or anything like that. So again, the bad is, again, we can look at the negatives, but there were positives to take from it. I'm not going to necessarily kill the coaches. That's like usually not what I do. It happens. We've seen this a couple of times with Arthur Smith with conservative play calling late in the game. And they probably would have gotten away with it had they just done a better job executing at the end of the, if Mariota doesn't botch that snap. And that's not even to blame Mariota for the loss or anything like that. They just failed to execute. They just needed to execute for one more play and they would have sealed this win. They didn't do it. And we would have sat here and said, hey, this team blew another lead, but hey, Arthur Smith's got that mojo, right? We would have had that narrative going for us. And then Dean Pease, of course, got conservative, which is not, again, he's been known to do this before. All you got to do is talk to Ravens fans. That's what he was known for. They were not going to miss Dean Pease when he left in 2017 because that was a season where they were known for blowing a number of leads that year. So again, not a surprise. Again, not really a thing where, I think a lot of people came away from last year thinking, hey, this coaching staff has some magic mojo that allows this team to finish. We didn't see that mojo show up on Sunday. And again, that's part of the reason why I don't really buy into the mojo, because it's just, you got to go out there and you got to execute. And the Falcons didn't necessarily do this. And again, part of the, the brand, the Will Anderson, Jalen Carter movement, maybe that pass rush would have gotten home late in the game, rushing just 4 and playing that soft zone if they had more horses up front. So you could certainly make the argument that the Falcons being thin up front certainly came back to bite them in the butt in this game. But, I don't want to single out any individual. I don't want to single out any unit to sort of blame it, blame this loss on. I would sit here and say that the Falcons had numerous opportunities to win this game. It was a team loss. Hopefully they will learn from it, and we'll see. The Rams they got the Rams next week on the road. The Rams are coming off a very embarrassing loss to the Bills. They had extra days to prepare, so we'll see how the Falcons bounce back. We'll learn a lot more about this team based off how they bounce back from this game. Do we see them lay an egg next week against the quote unquote better Rams team, or do they come out and play another great game and punch this Rams team in the mouth and play them a very competitive football team against a good, better but flawed Rams team, as we saw the Bills expose a lot of those flaws? And so, again, this is not exactly how I wanted to see it happen, but like, this is kind of what my expectations were for the Falcons. These competitive football games that, come down to the last possession or two. And then, my expectations going into the season were that they didn't necessarily have the firepower to win this game. And I don't think today that loss is because they lack the firepower. Again, I just think situational football with some questionable coaching and certainly some failed execution late in the game cost them in the end, but not a lack of firepower. But I don't really have a whole lot else to say about this game, guys. We'll leave it there. Tomorrow, I'm sure we'll have plenty to hear. And if you're looking for more fire and brimstone directed at the Falcons, my guest tomorrow, I'm certain will be able to provide it. That is, of course, Mark Zinno of the A to Z podcast, a part of the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family. He will share his 2 cents on tomorrow's episode. I'm sure he'll be much more willing to point fingers at some individuals in some units on tomorrow's episode. So we'll hear from what Mark has to say, bringing that fire and brimstone. And of course, I'll sort of check back with you later in the week, watching the film. And sort of hopefully, that will be up on Wednesday, the audio version, and Tuesday night, the video version of the podcast. And then later in the week, we'll turn our attention to the Rams. So if you want to get more thoughts on this game from Jarvis Davis of the ATL Day Ones, make sure you check out the Locked On Sports Atlanta YouTube channel, where you can check out the postcast where Jarvis and I went live trying to make sense of this game immediately after the game. It's hard to talk about these Falcons collapses immediately. Usually I have like a couple hours to process it before sitting here and coming on and talking about them on Locked On Falcons. But I tried my best, but Jarvis certainly pointed his fingers at the defense and the conservativeness on that side of the ball as the downfall of the Falcons on Sunday. And I think that's more than fair. So go check out the Locked On Falcons postcast on the video version on the Locked On Falcons, on the Locked On Sports Atlanta YouTube channel. And of course, you probably already, if you're on your phone listening to the audio version of this podcast, you can also find it there as well. Also, as your second listen after you've made Locked On Falcons today, your first listen, which we thank you for, make sure you check out the Peacock and Williamson podcast as your second listen. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you their expert analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. And Matt Williamson, notably, said the Falcons are in the running to pick number 1 overall. And so I'm curious to see if Matt's opinion has changed, or is he going to be like same old Falcons. So check out Peacock and Williamson on YouTube or where else. Go ahead and leave a comment for Brian and Matt and let them know what you think about the Falcons picking number 1 overall over there. So don't be too cruel towards Matt, but give him a little heat, because that he was a big factor in why I had to switch my prediction for the game, because hey, the Falcons will be bad, but come on, Matt, they're not gonna be that bad. Come on, man. You're right. So the Falcons almost shocked the world. Almost shocked, Tony Wiggins and Matt Williamson with the massive week 1 upset. But go check out Peacock and Williamson to get the lowdown on all the other week 1 games. I need to go check the scores myself as well. But guys, that's going to do it for us here. Another rapid reaction here on the Locked On Falcons podcast. Tomorrow we got Mark Zeno. Really, again, appreciate you guys. Hold your young ones, hold your loved ones to get over this loss from the Falcons. Appreciate it, guys. Until then.